The shuttle slid through the thin lavender mist surrounding Varan Prime's orbital ring, its hull reflecting the glow of twin suns. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Alien students clutched datapads and whispered among themselves as a single human sat motionless near the exit hatch. She didn't look at the windows, didn't shift her weight, didn't betray a hint of uncertainty. She simply waited. When the doors opened, Lyra Hale rose with silent precision. At 16, she was smaller than most of the species assembled, yet something about her presence drew every eye. As she stepped onto the polished black platform of Velrune Interstellar Academy, the conversations died instantly. No announcement accompanied her. No welcoming speech. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the docking clamps retracting. A group of avian scholars pressed together, feathers quivering. A scaled Varanite muttered under his breath, "Deathworld species, here?" His voice cracked slightly. Lyra didn't react. Her gray eyes scanned the environment, noting the guards, cameras, and exits with the efficiency of someone who had learned to survive by reading spaces before reading faces. Her hands remained at her sides, relaxed, but ready. An instructor with crystalline skin stepped forward, projecting authority. "Students, this is Lyra Hale of Earth. Treat her with respect. Humans possess unique biological adaptations. Do not provoke her." The warning only sharpened the curiosity around her. A mammalian student whisper clicked, "Why doesn't it, she, talk?" Another replied, "Maybe humans communicate with scent." A third added nervously, "Or vibrations." None of them received an answer. Lyra kept walking. The academy halls stretched wide, built from obsidian plates that shimmered under soft blue lighting. Holographic murals shifted across the walls, showing ancient Velrune battles, scientific milestones, and the treaty signing that had recently permitted limited human exchange. Lyra followed the instructor without hesitation. Inside the orientation chamber, students gathered around tiered seating. Lyra stood alone near the entrance, the only figure not fidgeting or adjusting something. Her stillness created a vacuum in the room, every species present seemed unable to look away. A tall Varanite stepped forward, shoulders broad, jaw traced with silver markings, a sign of nobility. His name floated in whispered recognition. Zarak Talvun. He approached Lyra with measured steps, stopping just close enough for dominance, but not close enough to violate protocol. His eyes glinted with disdain. "So, you are the human." He tilted his head. Silent. Small. Strange. His tone sharpened. "Tell me, creature of Earth, did your handlers forget to install a translator, or are you simply too primitive to speak to your betters?" The surrounding students stiffened. The instructor opened her mouth to intervene, but Lyra had already made her choice. She glanced at Zarak, just once, then walked past him without a flicker of expression. Gasps rippled across the room. Zarak's radiant markings pulsed with humiliation. "You dare turn your back on me," he hissed. Lyra paused, not looking at him, then resumed her pace. The message was clear without words, he didn't matter. The instructor cleared her throat. "Seating assignments will be sent to your datapads. Begin moving to your first session." The crowd dispersed, but whispers clung like static. Some admired her composure. Others feared what silence implied. A few interpreted it as hostility. In any case, her reputation began forming before she even opened her mouth. Her first class was Xenocombat Theory, a subject taught with sterile precision. The instructor, a chitin-armored veteran, activated a holodisplay showing various ecosystems across the galaxy. When Earth appeared, the room shifted uneasily. "This," he said, "is a Deathworld. Category 5. Oxygen-rich, gravity-heavy, predator-dense. Its native species evolved under conditions that would annihilate almost any known organism." Several students glanced toward Lyra. She remained still, gaze fixed on the projection. The instructor continued, "Humans survive through rapid adaptation. Instinct. Unpredictable behavioral patterns. Never assume a human is defeated when cornered. They possess reflexes that. A sudden impact echoed through the hall as a large Varanite accidentally dropped a metal cylinder. It clanged against the floor. Lyra turned instantly, no hesitation, no fear. Her eyes locked onto the sound with lethal clarity. For a second, the room stopped breathing. Her posture wasn't violent, nor confrontational. It was the posture of something evolved to assess threats before thought. The instructor nodded once, impressed. Students leaned away. Lyra slowly relaxed and looked back at the holodisplay. The cylinder's owner retrieved it with trembling hands. The lesson continued. In the next class, multi-species communication, students practiced common phrases using translation implants. Lyra didn't wear one. Her silent refusal baffled the instructor. "You understand these languages?" he asked. Lyra nodded once. "And yet, you choose not to speak them?" Another nod. The instructor, realizing pressure would only create tension, turned away. Zorak, however, did not. He sat behind her, voice a low growl. "What are you hiding, human? Shame? Fear? Or is silence your only trick?" Lyra didn't move. "I could break you with a gesture," he continued. "Your bones are fragile. Your world is wild, not disciplined. Here, strength is cultivated, not inherited." Still nothing. His frustration deepened. "Look at me." She didn't. That act, simple as it was, struck him harder than a blow. He slammed his fist on the desk. The sound echoed through the chamber. Lyra's breath didn't even hitch. Zorak glared at her profile, calm, unreadable, and felt something he couldn't articulate. Not anger. Not dominance. Something colder. A quiet fear. Later, as students dispersed for midday cycle, Lyra walked through a narrow corridor lined with silver vines. The architectural beauty contrasted sharply with the tension pulsing behind her. She sensed Zorak before hearing him. His steps were deliberate, shadowing her. "Human," he called out, "you will acknowledge me." She stopped. Zorak approached, expecting defiance or submission. Instead, Lyra stood perfectly still, her back straight, her breathing steady. She turned only her head, giving him half a glance. It was not a challenge. It was not fear. It was assessment. Her eyes moved as if calculating angles, distance, impact, escape. The way a hunted creature learns to survive. The way a predator learns to strike. For the first time, Zorak hesitated. He masked it quickly. "Your silence won't save you tomorrow," he said. "I'll make sure of that." Lyra blinked once, slow and quiet, then resumed walking. Behind her, Zorak clenched his jaw. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "you won't ignore me." He didn't notice the three students watching from a distance, their expressions uneasy. They had seen something subtle in that exchange, something dangerous. Not anger. Not arrogance. Instinct. That night, in her assigned quarters, Lyra sat on the edge of a narrow bed. Alien lights pulsed gently through the walls, simulating the rhythm of Varan's moons. She watched the patterns without blinking, her hands folded on her knees. She remembered the sound of tearing claws. Snow turning red. The breath of a creature she never saw until it was too close. The silence she had adopted to survive. She closed her eyes. Tomorrow would test her. Not her strength. Her restraint. Lyra woke before the academy lights brightened. She didn't need an alarm, her body moved on instinct, trained by years of survival drills. The artificial dawn washed the room in cool blue tones as she tightened her boots and adjusted her uniform. A quiet calm settled over her, the same calm that preceded storms. Hallways buzzed with morning chatter as students streamed toward their first lessons. Lyra walked alone, unnoticed at first, until she passed Zorak's cluster. Their conversation died immediately. Zorak watched her with a cold, simmering intent. "She pretends not to see us," one of his followers whispered. Zorak didn't blink. Not for long. Lyra continued without reaction. Their first class took place in the Academy's central atrium, a towering space filled with translucent trees and floating platforms. Holographic creatures drifted overhead, training simulations for xenobiology. The instructor, a thin being with luminescent skin, greeted the class. "Today," he said, "you will study predator instincts. Understanding them is critical for interspecies cooperation." His crystalline fingers tapped a control panel, shifting the environment around them. A hologram flickered into the shape of a massive, spined quadruped. Its jaws extended like scissor blades. Students leaned back reflexively. Lyra didn't move. "This is the Vorath Lurker," the instructor explained. "A shadow terrain ambush species. Fast. Silent. Lethal." Zarak's eyes drifted toward Lyra. Her expression remained unreadable. The instructor continued, "Its hunting pattern is simple: stalk, isolate, strike. It senses vibrations and movement. Direct confrontation is considered suicide." He paused. "Unless you are human. Your species developed counter-instincts none of us possess." The moment he spoke the word human, the room tensed. Lyra's breathing slowed slightly, barely noticeable. The instructor gestured toward the containment wing. "After theory, you will observe the lurker in secured habitat. No physical contact. This creature is unpredictable even by our standards." Zarak smirked. "How dangerous can it be?" "It's just an animal." The instructor gave him a piercing look. "Pride blinds more effectively than darkness, young Talvun." A brief chuckle rippled through the room. Zarak's markings pulsed an irritated gold. After theory, students walked through the reinforced corridor toward the live specimen lab. Lyra kept to the back, maintaining distance. Zarak and his friends trailed her, whispering too softly for others to hear. "She moves like she's hiding something," one said. "She ignores you because she's afraid," another added. "No," Zarak replied, eyes fixed on Lyra's steady gait. "Fear doesn't move like that." He wasn't wrong, and that bothered him more than arrogance could mask. At the lab entrance, a security officer scanned everyone. Thick glass walls revealed the darkened dome where the Vorath Lurker paced slowly. Its movements were unnervingly smooth, muscles flowing like oil beneath armored skin. One student murmured, "It's bigger than the simulations." The instructor nodded. "Simulations teach basics. Reality teaches respect." The lurker turned suddenly, its angular head tilting as if listening. Even through the barrier, its presence felt heavy. Zarak clicked his tongue. "A beast in a cage. Nothing more." The instructor sighed. "Step away from the barrier, Talvun. We calibrate containment daily to avoid incidents." Zarak stepped closer instead. Lyra watched quietly from several meters back. Her eyes tracked Zarak's posture, not the creature's. The instructor warned again, "Do not test it." Zarak held his palm near the barrier. "If humans can handle predators, surely I can intimidate one." Lyra tensed. A memory sparked, snow, breath fogging the air, a low rumble behind her. She exhaled slowly, grounding herself. The lurker's body stiffened. Its pupils shrank to slits. Lyra whispered under her breath, not words, just breath, an instinctive sound humans made when something was about to go wrong. A sharp clang echoed as Zarak lightly struck the barrier panel. The lurker lunged. The force rattled the entire observation deck. Students shrieked and stumbled back. Zarak jerked away from the glass, stunned. The instructor raced to the control console. "Back away from the containment, now!" Zarak retreated, jaw clenched, trying to hide the tremor in his hands. Lyra didn't mock him. She simply watched the lurker's movements, noting its pacing, its focus, its breathing. The instructor checked readings. Containment integrity stable. Do not antagonize the specimen again. He didn't see the twitch in Zarak's expression, an embarrassment that fermented into something worse. Later, during midday recess, students wandered through the arboretum. Lyra sat beneath a crystalline tree, studying the paths, entrances, and vantage points. It wasn't paranoia. It was habit. Zorak's group approached with feigned casualness. One of them called out, "Human. You have been silent long enough." Lyra didn't look up. Zorak stopped a few steps from her. "You ignored me again. Is this your strategy? Pretend nothing touches you?" His voice lowered. "I can change that." Lyra remained still. Zorak's frustration sharpened. "Say something. A word. A sound. Anything." Nothing. A small crowd gathered at a distance. Zorak finally stepped closer. "Fine. If silence is your shield, we'll see how long it holds." He motioned to his friends. They shifted positions deliberately, blocking exits, closing distances. It wasn't a physical threat yet, but an attempt to impose pressure. Lyra's gaze flicked upward, reading each placement, mapping their angles. Her expression didn't shift. A faint alarm sounded from the far corridor. Students froze. A security officer sprinted into view. "Containment breach in Xenobiology Wing. All students evacuate the lower section immediately." Panic exploded. Zorak blinked, caught off guard. "What breach?" The officer shouted, "The Vorath Lurker is loose." Lyra stood instantly. The Arboretum's overhead lights dimmed as emergency protocols engaged. A red glow bathed the pathways. Doors sealed. A tremor rolled through the foundation, something heavy moving fast. Students scattered, racing toward safe zones. Zorak's companions bolted without hesitation, leaving him exposed. He opened his mouth to order them back, but a guttural hiss from the shadows silenced him. Lyra stepped toward the sound before she even thought about it. Zorak stared at her. "Are you insane? Get back." She didn't. Branches rustled. The lurker's silhouette emerged, low, wide, its spines raised like jagged spears. Its eyes reflected the crimson light with unnatural sharpness. Zorak stumbled backward. No, this thing wasn't supposed." Lyra raised her hand slightly, signaling him to stop moving. Zorak froze, confused by the silent command. The creature locked onto the shifting movement around them. Students fleeing gave off vibrations that drew its attention. Lyra stepped into its view deliberately, placing herself between the lurker and the largest cluster of retreating students. The lurker paused, scanning her. Lyra's posture lowered subtly, precise, balanced, protective. A stance she hadn't used since the day she lost her team. The creature growled. Zorak's breath hitched. Lyra whispered one word, barely audible, but sharp enough to cut through panic. "Run." The lurker lunged. Zorak stumbled away. Students screamed. The emergency sirens flared. Lyra didn't move from her place. She braced herself. The creature's shadow swallowed her completely. The Vorath Lurker crashed through the vines with a force that shook the arboretum. Its claws carved deep grooves into the polished floor as it lunged at Lyra. She didn't retreat. She pivoted sharply, letting its momentum slice through the space she'd just abandoned. The creature slammed into a metal column, sparks bursting from the impact. Zorak watched from behind a shattered barrier, breath ragged, eyes wide. "She can't fight that," he whispered, disbelief overriding his pride. "No one can fight that." Lyra didn't hear him. Her focus narrowed to the creature's breathing, low, rhythmic, predatory. Its spines rattled with agitation as it turned toward her again. She shifted her weight, reading its stance. The lurker wasn't attacking blindly, it was evaluating her, the same way she was evaluating it. Students huddled behind emergency shields. Some cried. Others stared with paralyzed fascination. The academy's automated barriers flickered, failing to seal the area. "Security's offline," someone shouted. Another voice, trembling, "Why isn't she running?" Zorak clenched his jaw but didn't answer. The question struck deeper than he expected. The lurker lunged again, faster this time. Lyra ducked beneath its snapping jaws, rolling across the ground and rising in one fluid motion. She grabbed a metal pipe torn loose during the breach. It wasn't much, lightweight, narrow, but she held it with practiced hands. The creature circled her, tail scraping against the floor, spines angled forward. A low hiss rose from its throat. The room's temperature dropped as its camouflage abilities flickered in the dim light. Lyra stepped sideways, matching its rhythm. She didn't blink. A pulse of movement near her foot triggered a memory, snow in the tundra, a shadow cutting across her vision, the scream of a young soldier falling behind her. Her body tightened. "No," she murmured, grounding herself. "Not again." The lurker charged. Lyra slammed the pipe against its jaw, forcing its head sideways. The impact rang like a bell. The creature recoiled, dazed but far from subdued. It swiped at her with a hooked claw. She leapt back, barely avoiding the strike. A group of students gasped. One of them shouted, "She's going to get killed." Zorak stepped forward, torn between pride and fear. "You can't take it alone," he called out. "Human, move." Lyra didn't respond. She didn't need his guidance. She ducked behind a support pillar as the lurker collided with it, cracking the structure. Dust rained down. The creature's tail lashed outward, smashing a decorative panel into fragments. Lyra glanced at the exposed wiring sparking overhead. A plan formed instantly. She darted toward the junction box, using the chaos as cover. The lurker followed, drawn by her movement. Lyra grabbed a severed cable and pressed its charged end against the wet floor near the beast. Electricity arced across the tiles. The lurker shrieked, body convulsing as the shock disrupted its senses. It collapsed for a moment. But only a moment. The creature rose again, furious, muscles twitching from the jolt. Its eyes locked onto Lyra with renewed aggression. Zorak watched in stunned silence. "Why does she keep standing?" he whispered to himself. A student beside him replied shakily, "Because humans don't know when to give up." Zorak swallowed. "No," he said softly. "Because she doesn't want us to die." The lurker advanced slowly now, wary. Lyra tightened her grip on the pipe. Her heartbeat stayed measured. Her breath steady. She took 3 steps backward, guiding the creature toward the narrow service passage. A memory pulled at her focus again. The tundra. The blizzard. Her team's voices, swallowed one by one. Her own scream trapped in her throat. She forced the flashback down and whispered, "Stay with me," to herself. A grounding phrase she hadn't used in months. The Vorath Lurker lunged once more, sensing indecision. Lyra ducked beneath its swing, rolled into the service passage, and slammed her shoulder against the emergency lever. The metal grate dropped behind her, trapping the creature's torso halfway through. It thrashed violently. The grate bent. It wouldn't hold for long. Lyra raised the pipe and struck the exposed section of its skull, quick, precise blows aimed at sensory nodes. The creature shuddered. Its strength faltered. She swung again, one final strike that made the grate buckle but forced the creature to collapse. Its body slumped to the floor, unconscious. Silence filled the arboretum. Lyra lowered the pipe. Her hands trembled for the first time since the attack began. Security officers finally burst through the broken door, weapons drawn. They spread out, scanning for threats. One officer froze. "Is she alone with it?" Another murmured, "She neutralized a lurker without armor." Zorak stepped forward, voice unsteady. "She did more than neutralize it. She saved everyone." Lyra leaned against the wall, closing her eyes briefly. Her breath still steady, but her heartbeat thudded harder now that survival no longer anchored her focus. The lead officer approached cautiously. "Human student, are you injured?" Lyra shook her head. "Can you speak?" he asked. She nodded once. A beat of silence passed, then another question, softer. Would you like to? Her throat tightened. The memory she'd kept buried clawed its way up. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She felt the tundra wind ripping through her mind. The scream she never let herself make. Zorak stepped closer, unsure if he should help. Human, his voice faltered. Lyra, you don't have to if. She opened her eyes. And spoke. Her voice was quiet but held an unmistakable strength. I lost my team on Earth, she said. I survived because I stopped making noise. Silence kept me alive. I didn't know how to stop carrying it. Zorak swallowed hard. The room fell absolutely still. Lyra's gaze moved to the unconscious creature. I won't let another group die because I hesitated. The officer bowed his head. You acted with courage. You prevented a mass casualty event. Students stared at her with awe, not fear now. The whispering earlier had carried judgment. The whispering now carried something entirely different. Respect. Zorak stepped closer until he was a few feet away. His markings dimmed, the Varanite sign of humility. I thought you were ignoring me because you believed yourself superior, he said quietly. Now I realize, you were surviving in the only way you knew. Lyra didn't reply. Zorak sank to one knee, lowering his gaze. The chamber shifted with the weight of his gesture, an act no Varanite air performed lightly. Human, he said, voice low and steady, teach me. The lights flickered overhead, as if the academy itself paused to witness the moment. Lyra exhaled, long and steady. The silence that followed was no longer a shield. It was power. The academy sealed the arboretum within minutes. Reinforced partitions slid into place, and medical drones swarmed around the unconscious Vorath Lurker. Guards secured the perimeter while administrators hurried in, their expressions tight with worry and astonishment. Lyra stood near the cracked service passage, her hands still faintly shaking. She tried to keep her breaths controlled, but the adrenaline crash left her dizzy. The cold hum of emergency lights deepened the shadows around her. It felt too familiar, too close to a memory she had tried to bury. Zorak remained kneeling before her, markings dim, posture rigid with sincerity. Students watched from behind barriers, struggling to understand how the academy's strongest air had knelt for a human. Lyra swallowed and stepped back. His gesture was overwhelming, and she needed space. Stand, she said quietly. The single word carried no command. It felt more like a request. Zorak rose, unsure how to read her tone. You saved lives, he said. You saved mine. Lyra didn't answer. Gratitude was never her goal. Her hand brushed lightly against her wrist, grounding herself. Dean Verall, a tall amphibious figure in navy robes, approached with measured steps. Lyra Hale, he said calmly, we need to debrief you. Your actions prevented catastrophic loss. We owe you our thanks. Lyra nodded once. Zorak's jaw tightened. She owes you nothing. Dean Verall raised a brow. No one is claiming otherwise. Zorak stepped closer to Lyra, careful not to impose. If security had acted sooner. Lyra cut him off with a small shake of her head. I didn't fight because they were slow. I fought because I was there. Her tone carried a conviction that drew silence from everyone. The dean dismissed the crowd and guided Lyra toward the administrative chamber. Zorak followed a few steps behind, invited by no one, dismissed by none. He refused to leave her side, as if proximity might somehow protect her after the fact. Inside the chamber, holographs replayed the attack. Lyra flinched at the footage, her movements sharp, efficient, instinct-driven. She watched herself dodge claws, strike weak points, guide the creature, endure the fear. She saw the version of herself she had become after the Tundra incident. A version she didn't recognize fully, yet knew too well. Dean Verall folded his hands. Your instinctive strategies were remarkable. Have you received formal predator response training? Lyra shook her head. Experience. The dean paused. You spoke of losing your team. May I ask? No, her voice was soft but final. Serac stood against the wall, eyes lowered. He felt guilt where pride once lived. Dean Vorath nodded, choosing a different angle. Your actions today will become part of our case study on Deathworld species behavior. With your consent. Lyra hesitated. The idea of her fight being dissected unsettled her. Serac stepped forward. She's still processing what happened. Lyra shot him a sharp look, not angry, just surprised he spoke for her. He bowed his head. Forgive me. I overstepped. She exhaled slowly. I'll consider it, she told the dean. Vorath bowed in acknowledgement. Take your time. When they left the chamber, the corridors had quieted. Emergency barriers glowed dimly. A few staff members worked on repairing damaged systems. The metallic scent of scorched wiring lingered in the air. Serac matched his pace to Lyra's. After several steps, he spoke. You fought like someone who's lived through war. Lyra kept her eyes forward. I lived through Earth. He nodded slowly. Your silence. I didn't understand it. I know. I misjudged you. Yes. He winced slightly. Honesty cut deeper than scorn. Why stay silent now? He asked gently. After speaking earlier? Lyra paused in the middle of the hallway, turning to face him fully. Something in her eyes felt different, less guarded, but heavier. Silence became my armor, she said. It kept me calm. Alive. Predictable. Sound created danger. Noise drew predators. Words, she touched her throat. They hurt more than claws. Serac listened without interruption. She continued, when we lost the Tundra team, I stopped speaking completely. Communication changed. I relied on movement. Breathing. Distance. Serac slowly exhaled. Your strength doesn't come from power. It comes from surviving what should have ended you. Lyra didn't reply, but she didn't deny it. The dean called out from behind them. Lyra, a moment. They turned. We've analyzed the containment breach, the dean said. Someone manually lowered the security barriers inside the xenobiology wing. Serac's posture went rigid. Dean Vorath studied him carefully. We expect full cooperation when we investigate. Talvon, your presence near the control panels was noted. Serac's voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't expect it to escape. I only wanted to. He stopped, shame flooding his features. Lyra looked at him with an unreadable expression. Dean Vorath continued. You will both accompany me tomorrow to clarify the incident. Serac bowed his head. Yes, Dean. Lyra nodded silently. As the dean departed, Serac turned toward her, expression tight with remorse. I didn't mean for this. I thought scaring you would force you to acknowledge me. Lyra blinked once. You put everyone at risk. I know. You could have died. I know that too. A long pause followed. Finally, Serac spoke again. What you did. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want to learn from you. I need to understand what made you act instead of hide. Lyra's gaze softened a fraction, not sympathy, but quiet recognition. Fear didn't freeze me, she said. It shaped me. You let pride guide your choices. If you want to learn, you must start by letting it go. Serac lowered himself once more, not as a display, but as a genuine gesture of acceptance. I'm ready, he said. Lyra didn't stop him this time. A sudden vibration rattled the floor beneath them. The remaining lights flickered. The Academy's intercom crackled to life. Attention. Secondary breach detected in Lab Unit 4. All personnel evacuate immediately. Serac's eyes widened. Another breach? Lyra stepped toward the nearest viewport. A plume of smoke rose from the research wing. Distant silhouettes ran across the walkways. Automated drones swarmed the smoke. Sirens filled the air. Zorak grabbed a rail to steady himself. This wasn't me. I swear. Lyra already knew. His guilt carried weight, but not deceit. She scanned the rising smoke. Something pulsed within it, large, shifting, wrong. Zorak followed her gaze. What is that? Lyra narrowed her eyes. Something worse than the lurker. The intercom crackled again. Unknown organism unlocked from containment, identity unverified. Zorak swallowed. What do we do? Lyra stepped away from the window, shoulders tightening. We go. Into the breach? She nodded. People need help. Zorak's markings flickered uncertainly. You can't fight alone again. She looked at him, her silence no longer cold. Then don't let me. Zorak inhaled sharply. I won't. The floor shook again. Screams echoed down the corridor. Lyra took a step toward danger. Zorak followed her without hesitation. The echo of her silence no longer isolated her. It led.